Conversation is brought to you by Marcus and Mack, voted best personal injury law firm in the Best of Indiana County contest. Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Good morning.
Good morning.
Last week we were talking, and I said, there's something I have to remember to ask you next week. Do you remember what it was?
Did you remember what it was?
Because I don't. Do you?
No, because I was trying to earlier, and it wasn't coming to me yet.
Yeah, I'd like to call you a loser for not remembering that.
Why didn't I write that down? Why didn't we
either.
write that down on a piece of paper?
Oh, gosh.
Because we'd lose the piece of paper, probably.
Yeah, probably that. Probably that. Well, I do recall we were talking about lawns and moles and things of that nature.
We were talking about pruning.
Oh, yeah, pruning plums.
Yes, that was it. Prune plums.
Yeah, they actually are called prune plums, but we need to prune our prune plums.
Prune the plums.
Yeah. Is that all that much different from other viney things like grapes?
Yes, because they're a tree. A plum is a tree. And because the final product is a prune, which is a dried plum, it starts as a plum.
Okay.
So it's a tree.
But in terms
it's
of
similar, and
pruning
it's a stone
protocol.
fruit. It's grouped with the other stone fruit trees. So peaches, nectarines, all are stone fruit because they have that seed in the middle of them. Versus a pome, P-O-M-E fruit, which is an apple, which it has seeds, but it doesn't have one central seed. It has multiple seeds in the cavity. So anyway, plums are a little bit different, a lot of similarities. You still go through the same set of steps to look at each tree, whether it's an apple or a plum, but, looking at structure. Is there any dead wood, damaged wood? Is there growth that's clogging things up, essentially crisscrossing, rubbing on one another, going back into the tree? In any case with fruit, we want to get light in. Light's critical for good fruit development, good color development. So you could have a fruit that's normally should be red, and it might be green and yellow if it doesn't get any light. So that light's very important in that coloration process and development. So in any case, we're trying to have some openness there so we can let avenues of light to get in. Plums can tend to grow more vertical than horizontal, so we have to train them. And some apple varieties are the same way. Some are more open. Their limbs aren't as stiff and strong. They might weep a little bit. Some are more horizontal branching versus that real strong,
straight up
growth. Pears tend to grow straight up. So we really have to work with them to get a good structure that'll hold fruit and not snap branches out. And same, pears aren't quite as vertical in growth, but we still have to focus on them really from the time we plant them up through into when they're bearing fruit and beyond, but getting that structure there to begin with any fruit tree is really important.
So what you were saying last week about apple trees really applies to prune plums when you're trimming those plants as well.
Yeah, so you're trying to get a good structure, framework, which means strong branches that will support fruit. If we don't do that, and we talked about vertical growth is weaker where that branch attaches to the main trunk, the narrower the V, the closer that branch is towards that trunk or the tree, which is normally growing straight up or pretty straight, the weaker that branch is, the less fruit it'll be able to hold. So getting that out there at 60, 70 degrees, 90 would be...
So you train that with a spacer?
Yes.
Okay.
So sometimes those branches will naturally provide that, and then other times we have to, put a spacer in there. a branch spreader to get it going in the direction we want it to go. And there's a lot of, over time in the last 25, 30 years, that has become much more important with the transition to dwarfer systems and different, trellis systems. There's slender spindle and walls, and there's all kind of variations of that. But in trying to do more training and work with the tree, there's rubber bands that you can buy, and of course there's different lengths of spreaders. You can make your own, but ultimately, whatever you do, you can even cast concrete, take an egg carton, and make weights, and pour concrete into the egg carton and put a horseshoe nail in there, or a not a paper clip, but a clothespin. Okay. The one leg of the clothespin in there, so that you have some way to attach it to a branch. But then when those branches are small, we can hold them. That's a way to hold those branches down. So there are various techniques to do that, but ultimately what you're trying to do is get a good, strong branch that will be able to support fruit. You go to all that, if you don't do that and you get too many fruit on the branch, and this happens fairly regularly, but it snaps or it breaks. And then all that time and effort is now wasted, because in most cases you have to remove that branch and find another one.
One of these days we're going to have a discussion on why people pronounce it pruin instead of prune. That might be a discussion for another day, though. I want to take that, what you just said, and I want to move that over to discussion of shrubbery. Particularly, as you know, my famous shrubs and the yews, and the yew that got struck by the truck a couple of years ago. You cannot get those anymore because growers don't grow them, because the deer come and eat them before they ever get a chance to form into the shape that you want them to. So it's impossible to get them. Trust me, I know.
Yeah, you've tried.
So I decided to leave that one in with all of the damage that truck did to it when it ran up over the embankment and smashed into it. So I've got this big hole there, and last year I just took strings and I sort of tied the branches on either side of the hole together with the intention that maybe this year I put shorter strings and maybe try to pull them back in slowly. Is there any chance that ever works?
Yeah, that can work. Yeah, you're redirecting.
Because the structure inside next to the trunk of the actual yew, some of it got pretty badly damaged too, and I cut all that stuff off.
Yeah, and that was the first step in trying to recover that shrub, is get anything that's really too damaged out of there, anything that's dead or broken, and then look at what you have left. And then in that case, usually you have branches, you have to be careful with yews. There's only so far back in that they have buds and ability to, if you prune them too hard, all you'll be left with is dead sticks,
Yeah.
So you have to be careful with yews on that. And every plant's a little different. You can categorize them, but plants are different in whether they have those buds, how far back in they can generate new growth. Some can, some can't. And so we have to prune it and try to work with it based on its characteristics and ability to do what you want it to do. But yeah, you can just like you did, try to get those branches to train to fill that hole in or grow in that direction.
Yeah.
Just taking a side branch, getting it to anything that's facing in. The advantage there is that there's a hole there, there's light getting in there. So that light going down in actually will encourage new growth to fill in that hole more so than where there already is, where it's too dense or denser.
Another yew on the property also had a similar problem, not from a truck, it just some sort of disease hit it or something years ago. And so it had a big hole, but it was on the backside away from the road. And it still gets plenty of sunshine. I cleaned all the dead stuff out of there, and last year, for probably the first time, maybe the last 2 years, it started regrowing to fill in that hole now. But it's like a 20-year process before it ever gets back to where it was, and I'll never be around to see it. But
yeah, some of those things can take a while, but
yeah,
there can be fun. That's one of the things about gardening is that it can be a challenge, it can be an opportunity, it can be fun to try to do that. And there's different forms of training plants, different forms of shearing. You can shear a lot of plants into shapes. We just think about hedges that we have. So a lot of times we'll use evergreens as a hedge, and of course hemlock is one that's very resilient to being able to prune and shear those to make a hedge, and you can do it in different widths. You can, but you have to keep at it, and especially if you're some of those spindle, some of the junipers that you see trained in a spindle fashion, or kind of a staircase fashion. You have to keep after that. After a while, they'll grow out of that. That's not how that plant. That's not the genetics in that plant to do that. That's us.
That's not naturally occurring.
Right, doing that. Yes, it had the vertical growth. It's a narrow shrub, but getting those forms and shapes were created by.
See, my theory is those plants
somebody's artistic ability.
They're actually embarrassed to be shaped like that. So
you will not have that.
They don't like that. I can tell.
Somewhat letting nature take its course.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, a little shrub talk and tree talk and fruits and all of those lovely things today here in Indiana in the morning. Very good.
And that's within fruit production. A lot of effort has been put into the architecture of the tree and trying to adapt that, because these days there's a lot of emphasis on mechanization. And the need to do that for various reasons, not just because we don't have enough employees to do the work, but there's other reasons to try to do that, profitability being one of them. But a lot of effort's gone into, well, how can we take these trees that might normally grow to 5, 6, 7 feet wide and 15 feet tall and make them into a wall, essentially a hedgerow. And then what's the training that's necessary to be able to do that? And will the tree do that? So they've come a long way, and a lot of that's related to robotics and what they're able to do in creating a robot and its ability. So they've adapted the trees and the pruning practices so that it makes it easier, essentially, for a robotic arm to come in and grab an apple or do some other, even pruning within that orchard row.
Or scratching your back as you're grabbing
you could do that too.
Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Do you ever have questions in your life? Questions that you are searching to find answers to? Hi, I'm Pastor Ben Blowers with the Indiana Wesleyan Methodist